We open the Harwich Board of Selectmen's meeting for this date, March 16th, 2015 at 6 o'clock. Went into executive session to discuss potential purchase of the Hall property and also to discuss bargaining position with the fire chief. I think we're moving in a positive direction in both issues, so we'll have something we can announce shortly, I hope. Move now to Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Move next to weekly briefing. Public comment.
Good evening.
Good evening, Sally.
I'm Sally Urbano from Harwich. Excuse me, I'm going to read this. I just have a comment to remind everybody in Harwich that we have a tradition called the care and feeding of herring, and last year's speech really speaks to me and maybe to you for this particular moment in time. It's a good reminder for us anyway, because as our town grows, conflicts are going to grow and we're going to need to navigate them. I'm currently very concerned about the conflict occurring with the school budget. There was a hate page on Facebook. There's a lot of confusion, a lot of misinformation out there that's abounding. And I believe the process must continue in its fact-finding mission. But there are a lot of questions out there. We need to remain on task, and if we do that, there will be less chance for any harm to the relationships within our town. How we proceed on this really counts, and in fact, I think it defines our town. Can we shake hands? Can we move on after the vote is taken? In closing, I want to paraphrase something I saw in Bill Burkhead's log, which I think really speaks to this as well. It was a quote from his favorite educator, and it says that the best indicator of student success is actually the quality of relationships within the school building. I'm going to explain that circle because I think that includes parents, Harwich residents, the business community. All of that together will help us create a great school. So in the meantime, I would really, really hope that we can get some answers to our questions, some solid facts. Thank you.
Thank you, Sally. Anyone else for public comment?
Good evening, Justin Tavano. I'm a Harwich resident. I'm also a firefighter over in Chatham. I just have an announcement about an upcoming community event. Each year for the past, this will be the eighth year, the firefighters in Chatham have sponsored a polar plunge on April 1st. We call it the April Fool's Plunge. And every year we kind of ring in the new season by raising money for a local family or individual in need. This year we're swimming in honor of Jesse Nash. He's a 4-year-old boy from Chatham who's battling cancer. And I just wanted to help spread the word. So I'll leave some flyers if anybody wants to take one on their way out. We're also on Facebook if anyone wants to go on there. It's the event this year is being called Big Splash for Jesse Nash, and you can find it on Facebook that way. Thank you.
That's great. It's a great cause. I have to work up a lot of nerve before I jump in the cold water, but just for a minute, I'm told. So, yes, ma'am.
Hi, Megan Smith, Harwich resident. I just want to take a moment before the discussion starts about the debate and about the budget and everything. And I just want to thank Mr. Carpenter for doing such an excellent job of presenting the information on the budget on his superintendent's page. He's broken it down, and he's made it very clear where the expenses are, where the shortfalls have been, where the money is going, where the money needs to go. Parents have made it very clear where they'd like to go. There's been a very comprehensive discussion board on Facebook, thanks to Joy Jordan, with over 600 people, and I think the discussion's been fantastic. And I also think that the end result has been a much more involved, greater involvement by the public in everyday civic matters here in the town, and if anything, it's been a great civic lesson for us. So thank you for the discussion that's been going on. Thank you for all the information that's been presented by the schools. And like the previous speaker said, hopefully we can move forward after this and all shake hands and be happy with the resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on then to the consent agenda. We'll have more chance to debate and have public comment on the schools when it comes up very shortly. Ed, do you wish to go through the consent agenda?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to present the consent agenda and move approval of the recommended actions thereon. Approval of the minutes of February 23rd, 2015 regular session, March 2nd, 2015 regular session, March 2nd, 2015 executive session, a vote to acknowledge the potential conflict of interest and move forward with Monomoy Regional School District's appointment of Leslie Schneeberger as Harwich's representative on the Monomoy Regional High School Building Committee, and C, a vote to sign amendment number 4 to design services contract with CDR McGuire Inc. for Muddy Creek project.
Second.
I would, thank you. I would like to hold C for, give us a chance. I don't have any issues with C. I just wanted to give Bob Caprelli and Chris a chance to explain it. And I wanted to have it as part of consent because I know we have a lot of people that are here to talk about the school budget. And I didn't want this discussion to wait until the end. So if I could hold C and come back to it.
Sure.
Okay.
We'll put it under new business.
Well, we'll just discuss it when we at the end of the consent.
Okay. Okay.
Is there any discussion on A and B? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
C, Bob, do you want to give us a brief rundown of activities on this?
Yeah,
Chris, I assume that's okay. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, Bob Caffarelli, town engineer, and I will be brief, not too technical. This is Amendment 4 to the contract for the design and permitting of the Muddy Creek Bridge. It details, as you can see, he's very detailed in how many extra hours and by what people in his firm will be required to do the extra work. Primarily because of the change in the scour depth. Again, I don't want to get too technical. I reviewed.
Well, Bobby, you need to just very quickly explain scour depth. That's how high the bridge has to be.
Yeah,
'Cause it loses me.
there was a hydraulic study. The design of the bridge is determined on what the scour depth to the abutments are. Originally, the scour depth was determined to be roughly in the range of 10 feet. The contractor made a rough estimate, and another contractor made a rough estimate for the 10 feet, so the design went forward based on the 10 feet. When the hydraulic study from the contractor, Akers was the contractor, they came up with a figure of 23 feet, which is over double the 10 feet. So the Muddy Creek team went to the design engineer, CDR McGuire, and said, well, what is this going to do to our costs, the construction costs, to the design? So we had them do a number of scenarios, what could be done to accommodate the scour of 23 feet, what changes to the abutments, to the piles, and so he had to do a number of different designs, and this basically is the effort to do the designs. Now, he did it. Much of this work has already been done. I found the engineer to be very responsive to the town. I feel he's done a good job. And he went forth. We didn't want the project delayed, so we went forth and did most of this work, hoping that we would approve a change order. And I think this change order is fair, is justified. It's $63,000 some odd dollars. That's for both towns. I ran this by the Muddy Creek representative from Chatham, and he has no problem with it. I ran it by the Division of Fish and Wildlife. They're the ones that reimburse. This is reimbursable on a monthly basis. I'm submitting all our bills for design and permitting to the Division of Fish and Wildlife, where we have a $400,000 grant. So, unless there are any other questions.
Are there any questions for Bob? This is a necessary process to meet the demands of Mass Department of Transportation and hopefully get our bridge done. If there's no questions, I'll entertain a motion for this.
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve the amendment to the contract with CDR McGuire.
There's-
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you, Bob.
Okay, thank you.
We'll move next to public hearings and this presentation of the final Monomoy fiscal year 16 regional school district budget. And I know we have a large crowd, and I asked one gentleman already to wait. We'll have chance for public comment during this agenda item. As you know, part of the regional agreement is that the Monomoy School Committee will present a budget periodically to the combined Harwich Board of Selectmen and the Harwich Finance Committee. Skip, who's chair of the Finance Committee, and I've worked together, and so we have the rest of the Finance Committee up here, and tonight is Skip's turn to chair this meeting. So, Mr. Patterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening. Tonight we conclude a series of joint meetings sponsored by the Board of Selectmen of Harwich and the Harwich FinCom with the Monomoy Regional School District Committee and administration. Our format for this evening is to hear from the Superintendent, Scott Carpenter, and the School Committee Chair, Terry Russell, about their 5-year forecast for operating the district. That's through fiscal 20. This forecast is extremely important to Harwich because Monomoy uses nearly 45% of the town's budget, and without knowing what to expect, makes planning the municipal services budget nearly impossible. In short, the municipal budget and the Monomoy budget need to be coordinated. The forecast will probably take about 15 to 20 minutes, and I'll then solicit comments and questions from the Board of Selectmen and FinCom members. Once their commentary has concluded, we will entertain comments from the public. Because there are so many in attendance, I would ask that you limit your remarks to no more than 2 minutes, and that you not repeat what has already been said here, so that there will be more opportunity for more people to participate in the discussion. I would also ask that when you rise to speak, please go to the microphone, announce your name, street, and town prior to commenting or asking a question. Mr. Russell and Mr. Carpenter, will you please give us a high-level tour of your 5-year projection, starting with the Harwich assessments over time? So Terry, you're doing the a cappella today?
It will be less than the acapella. I'll save you some minutes.
I yield the balance.
Thank you.
I'll give them to those guys. Say it.
Chris, Caleb, maybe we have to shut off one of the lights here, or can we see that? I guess we can see it. Isn't that? We may need a student to come in and help you out here.
Better glasses. I'm gonna look up there.
Installment number 2. Thank you, sir.
What I'll do is, I just want to do a quick overview of where we are for 16 that actually dovetails into the spreadsheet. So, so the selectmen had given the school district a spreadsheet and asked us to populate some of the fields. What we did is took the liberty to add some fields or some rows to the spreadsheet to try to provide more transparency in the sheet. So there's a couple places in what we have been presenting to the board that sort of dovetails back to the sheet. Most of these slides you've seen for the past 4 months, so I just want to kind of zip through, get to the end, and then loop back to the other spreadsheet. And I'll need my glasses for that. So just to inform both boards, last Wednesday, the Monomoy Regional School Committee voted to accept the superintendent's, or the budget that I have been presenting to you, which is a reduced staff budget. It is a $35 million budget. The budget numbers have been slightly updated from the previous presentations because in the last week and a half. Oh, that's not us. It's the projector.
You gotta move the screen, yeah.
Um,
So move the screen.
The numbers are slightly different than what we've seen in the past months because we were waiting on the governor's numbers. Those numbers are in, but we want to emphasize that just because we have the governor's numbers, it's still a process. The governor's numbers need to go before the House and Senate, and they are subject to change. But in the global scheme of things, there was minor adjustments to the numbers as they impact the two towns. We spoke, on this want to going through this budget process to continue to deliver on the promise of Monomoy, both the educational promise and fiscal promise. And again, looping back to the spreadsheet you have, one of the first lines on the second page looks at staffing. And it looks at the number of classroom teachers that the district employed as we started as a region when we had 6 schools, and then what Monomoy will have at the end of this reduced staff budget. We go from 184 classroom teachers to 167 classroom teachers, and this is a number that the school district has to report out to the DESE. This is a number, if you go onto the DESE website and look up number of teachers, it's listing number of teachers in a school district. That doesn't include your counselors and your librarians and nurses that are covered under the teacher's contract. These are the teachers that are in classrooms. So the thing I want to emphasize here is there's 17 fewer teachers with a regionalized Monomoy. 17 fewer teachers at the average teacher salary that you can also pull off of the DESE website of $67,000. That's $1.15 million in savings of teachers. That's something that the towns experience year after year. It's a savings that the towns will have year after year because of regionalization. And the teachers are only 60% of our staff. And despite having fewer teachers, the thing that we're proud about is that we've been able to maintain the same supportive class size that Harwich Public Schools had before we regionalized. In addition, we've been able to add program. It's a better program than either school district had before regionalization. And with this reduced staff budget, we maintain that strong program. We'll have Mandarin at the high school, in addition to Latin, Spanish, and French. We've increased the AP offerings. We'll have a vibrant enrichment program at the middle school. We've bolstered the mathematics instruction. We've slowly started to increase extracurricular opportunities and athletic opportunities for our students. That's important. That's part of that promise for Monomoy just as much as that fiscal savings. In addition, regionalizations, eliminated administrators, 1 superintendent, 2 principals. There's another $400,000 plus benefits. As we combined 2 middle schools and 2 high schools together, librarians, nurses, clerical staff, custodial staff, teaching assistants, and cafeteria workers were reduced. I mean, all that staffing combined is a lot of savings that the 2 towns are experiencing year after year from here on because we regionalized. In addition, Harwich is saving millions by building Monomoy Regional High School with Chatham and is maintaining its NEASC accreditation for its high school. Harwich also saves millions by sending its middle school children to Monomoy Regional Middle School in Chatham rather than shouldering the burden of much needed updating that the former Harwich Middle School would have needed. And I know ever since I've been here, there's been this debate. It's like, how much of the savings were both towns supposed to see? The way I look at it at this point, it's rather moot. The real story is that there's significant savings that the regionalization produced and improved educational program. So we began with a $36 million budget. It was out of whack by $2.5 million above and beyond 2.5%. We've discussed that it was above that primarily due to the lack of school choice dollars when building the FY16 budget. The thing I want to emphasize is that by putting $1 million additional dollars into last year's budget, the FY15 budget, that was the school district being a good partner here in this this partnership. It lowered the town's assessments last year. Had the school district not put that much of its reserves into the budget last year, we would have been having this conversation last year. What do we need to do to go and maintain the quality of our schools? We now have what was once unknown is now known. The insurance is going up by 10%. There's a 10% increase in other insurances in the budget. The revenues that we are expecting in terms of the governor's budget are known. There's a slight increase in Chapter 70 aid, balanced off by a slight reduction in regional transportation and circuit breakers level funded. There's a slight increase in the minimum contribution for both towns, and the formula got tweaked once again by the state that shifts things modestly towards Chatham, so their assessment on their end has a slight bump compared to what we've previously presented. The reductions we put into the initial budget that I came before you are over $1 million. The bulk of that $1 million shows up in the salary line. This reduced staff budget reduces staffing by 10 staff, 1 kindergarten teacher at Harwich Middle School, 6 teachers at Monomoy Regional High School, 2 Monomoy Regional Middle School teachers, and a support staff position. And the other thing to emphasize here is while the budget is cut by 10 FTEs, we've offered an early retirement incentive to our employees, so many of those staff will be protected from layoffs by retirements of individuals within the school district, although not all. So there will be a few people that have their jobs are lost in this. It's also important to note, and I'll get here at the last slide, that the early retirement incentive really is going to help the district in the out years. I mean, greatly. We had over 20 teachers have signed up for the early retirement incentive, which is actually more. There was one that was offered just in that initial year of regionalization with the hopes. I think the thought was folks won't want to go and pack classrooms and move, but there wasn't as much of an outpouring for that incentive as now. So where we are now, there's the $35 million budget that the school district voted to approve. The school district votes it by line. In that budget, we use $600,000 of excess and deficiency to help reduce the assessments to the 2 towns. I've mentioned to both boards, $600,000 is more from excess and deficiency than we typically expect to see in a typical year rolling from one budget year into the next. It's also important to note in the assessments that there's a 0.65% shift in the assessment just by enrollment. There's on the 3-year rolling average, there's more Harwich students within Monomoy this year than last year. So there's a shift just towards Harwich just by the enrollment numbers alone. So the final bottom line, the $35 million budget is $688,000 above 2.5% on the Harwich side and $183,000 above 2.5% on the Chatham side for a total of $872,000. So just my quick commentary here. One of the things that I've clearly heard from the board's concern, it's like looking forward in that 5-year plan. We've been clear that there's not a COLA that's built into the FY16 budget. While there isn't a COLA built in the FY16 budget, when we were putting together the 5-year forecast that you have in front of you, the directions we were given by the town of Harwich was to have the salary line increase by 2.25% per year. So within that 2.25%, there's a slight amount of funding available for a COLA. The other thing to keep in mind, with 20 teachers retiring or taking advantage of this early retirement incentive in this year, there's an additional amount of money just in that early retirement incentive by itself in the out years that can support a COLA, so we can maintain the quality of our staffing and the morale of our staffing, which is, we've got great teachers and great support staff in this district, and it's important that that we maintain them in years to come. I'd strongly recommend that this board support this reduced staffing budget in order to maintain strong schools for our families and our town's children. And lastly, this is your opportunity as boards to build and preserve a strong Monomoy. In terms of the micro print that you have in front of you, in addition to pencil sharpeners, we should have included magnifying glasses. What we've done is incorporated the various assumptions that we were given at the beginning of this process here. Again, on the salary lines, there's a 2.25% increase in salaries. That was the assumption that the 5-year plan went with. Initially, in the conversations, it was to have insurance increase by only 4%, and it became quite clear as we were building the 5-year plan that assumption was faulty in year 1 alone. And there are challenges when you look at a 5-year plan. As you get out of this year, you're making assumptions that that can potentially compound out there. But as I said, there's the potential or capacity in this to have COLA by virtue of the early retirement. We can't fully go fold the early retirement numbers in until the teachers are actually truly retiring. At the moment, we have commitments from people on paper, but you can only bank on it when they're actually not on your roster in the following year. One of the things that we tried to do in this, if I can get to the line, is look at what the Harwich assessment would be for the operating, including transportation. And I want to emphasize this takes 2 lines out of the budget. It takes the debt cost out of the budget, and it also takes capital out of the budget. And the reason I take capital out of the budget is at least in my former district, we would look at capital in the regional school district along with the towns as sort of joint capital planning. And the same way that that on the town side, you'd buy a new fire truck or have a capital outlay. There are certain things that you see coming down the line that that need to be dealt with. The biggest capital thing looking out at 2020 is there are 2 schools in the district that have roofs that need to get done, and it's one of those things that in my opinion, it's best to go and address capital as one-time things, not to have it rolled into the base budget for the school district. So I've pulled capital out to sort of ideally have it addressed by the towns and town meeting as one-time capital exclusions, not to be built into what the district's budget is year after year and compounding. The last thing that's pulled out of here is the debt. The full cost for funding the school district really comes online in FY16. That's the big challenge that both towns have had, and I know that I've had even in Chatham, I've had members of the finance committee look at this and say, well, the school costs are going up a lot next year, and they are, particularly if you look at it, if you include the debt. If you take the debt increase out of it, the school's going up by half as much. But the debt, as your 2 boards came to conclude back, I believe it was in November, that was a conversation that the taxpayers decided upon a couple years ago. So debt's pulled out. So if we look at what's been or how the operating budget is tracking for Harwich and what the assessments are going to be tracking for Harwich as we go from FY14 to FY20, you see that the in 14 it was a 3.8% increase. Then as we fully regionalize, or as we start to regionalize, there's a 2% decrease. Then we get to this budget, which is a challenging one, is a 5% increase for Harwich. Next year continues to be high, that 4.83%. The reason for that, it's as I kind of quickly skimmed through the presentation, we had $1 million of school choice money that wasn't there, that has to be partly made up in the process of putting together this budget. It's made up by using excess and deficiency funds of a magnitude that won't be present when building the FY16 budget, which is why that number, until we create, let's call it a new norm, where we're not using more reserves from any of the reserve accounts in the district, you're going to see these numbers. So presuming that there's a way to compensate for the overuse of excess and deficiency in building the FY17 budget, you see then the numbers get closer to that, closer to 2.5% in the out years. I don't know if that's high enough, or where, what level you want to go into.
Well,
skip on this.
why don't we open it up to questions from Board of Selectmen and FinCom and see where we go from there? Questions? Comments? Peter.
Let me have you to start. You want me to? Thanks, Scott, for putting this together. I know we just gave you this format, I think, last week, and I'm sure, Katie, you had a lot to do with it, so thank you. It's
Yeah, don't thank me. Thank Katie.
I know where the numbers come from. We're going to make her get up here and speak at some point in time. But I think it's important that we all have an understanding, at least what the plan is, for the next 5 years, because just like you do, we need to plan, and this town has an ongoing, continuously updated both capital plan and plan on where it's going financially. I do want to say, and this is not a reflection on you, and I don't think anybody is currently on the, well, maybe 1 or 2 people are currently on the school committee, but part of what we expected financially, and we talk about the hopes and dreams and aspirations and promises and whatnot, and I'm only going to say this once, that by this point in time, we were led to believe during the process of getting to the regional school system and the vote and all, that we would be sitting here looking at an operating budget about $4 million less than we are today. I'm over that now. I mean, I tell you, I've had dreams and nightmares about it, and but it is what it is at this point in time, and I'm going to stop talking about it. Okay, I think that what has to happen here now is we need to plan for the future. We need to plan for the future. there's a lot of talk about, where the selectmen are, where the FinCom are for this year. And quite frankly, hopefully after tonight, we start to do our work, because we now know what your needs are very definitely, and we've known for a bit of time. We've made provisions in our warrant for the school budget to include an override if we need it, but not if we don't. I'm assuming next week when we do a ballots next week, we'll do the same thing, just to have ourselves ready in case we need it. But then I would hope that the Finance Committee and the Board of Selectmen start working and saying on our own budget and on our own capital plans and our own, capital exclusions and that type of thing. We need to have the opportunity in the next couple weeks to go to work and figure out, okay, can we draw, $300,000 of this from our existing budget, pull it out somehow. Gee, do we have to do any override? We have to have some time to react to all that stuff. And, I don't think there is no opportunity tonight to say, yes, we're voting for the budget and that's it, we're done. We need to work these things through. But I think after tonight, we have the numbers. You've given us the numbers, and I think we're prepared then to go to work, which we need to do, and figure out how to fit it with the whole thing. And there'll be more discussions to come, and we would hope that you guys continue to sharpen your pencils a little bit if you can. Things change, things get adjusted. But I think it's very clear what the mission is of these two boards in the next couple of weeks. And we need to do it on a number of other things too, not just the school budget, but of course, the school is a big number. So.
One of the things that, Peter, I wanted to just bring up, at the joint selectmen's meeting, there was a graph that you had presented, and I'm raising this because I appreciate the graph. I'm one of these people that that likes numbers and trends and slopes and kind of the math guy who went into administration somehow. But the important thing is, I think the big debate is the blue line. How far did the blue line in your graph drop down? And was it supposed to drop down $4 million, or what was the realistic amount of drop? And the thing I want to emphasize is we've hit that bottom. It's not there's not an ability for the school district to come back in building the FY or the FY17 budget and say, okay, there's a way we're going to be consolidating, and there's 17 more positions that can be reduced, and that there's, we're at that place where, where we've now hit wherever that blue line was supposed to be, or we're there, and now we have to kind of start looking forward. How do we maintain great schools, for our two towns, or quality schools for our two towns? And I know I kind of came in here on the cusp of the central office had consolidated, and there had been some loss of positions before I got here, and then there was some loss of positions as the two schools, two middle schools came together and the two high schools came together. Well, now we're at that point where where the graph is tracking off into the future, and that's it's unrealistic for us to kind of think, regionalization's going to suddenly get us the next whatever amount of money some people were expecting. That
I naively think of that as, for the last couple of years we've been practicing, and now it's time to go play the game. So, I think on all sides, we had some expectations on particularly financially, what regionalization was going to do. I'm sure your team, and I call it a team, had some expectations, both, educationally and financially, what was going to happen. Probably maybe paying more attention on the educational side. But quite frankly, whoever ended up making the estimates on how this is all going to play out, obviously we have some errors in the estimates. There's no doubt about it. Today we are where we are, and I think the important thing is we need to figure out if we can make this thing, we will figure out how to make it move forward, but how to make it move forward so it works, for everybody, I think is the way we have to look at it here. Okay?
Larry?
Thank you, Skip. And thanks, a good presentation.
Larry, if I can make a comment. I'm fortunate to have Scott as a numbers man, because I am not. However, in my past life, I've spent, as you folks have, especially FinCom, that as Chris and Larry and Scott and myself back in September began to look at this budget, I was very intent upon trying to get to that 2.5. And as we went down to this number, 688, which I don't like either, sincerely I felt in the ability to sit in as a subcommittee on the school committee on finance and looked over all of the categories to move it down to 500, 400. And each time I said that, not necessarily because I want all sorts of high-quality programs, but where does that edge cut and really feel? And I know we've heard this years after years. What's the difference between bone and muscle, and how deep can you cut? I have regrets on this, but also I feel that our committee has put the best effort to get it where it is now. This new normal, the stability someone mentioned to a couple of weeks ago with the joint Chatham-Harwich committee, where after 2 years opening and 170 days of the brand-new doors being opened, where we are here. And I don't have the magic solution. We've had smaller group meetings to see where is some room that we could make this potential override go away. And we haven't been able to trip over it yet. So as we move in the next few weeks, hopefully there could be a breakthrough. On the other hand, we have to be realistic too. Otherwise, I think that point we reached a month ago where what would 888 look like with the cuts that were present? Whatever that total amounted to, 27 staff. And it really would set us back, I think, years, and you could finally make up new promises for Monomoy.
Thank you, Terry. My comment was following Peter's and Scott's is that, we have to let the past go in some respects and move forward at this point. We all had expectations, I agree with moving of debt. It's an economic, I guess, one-on-one is it's a sunk cost at this point. We've committed to it. I guess, Scott, I looked at the graph that Peter presented, and I was less concerned about the drop, or less impressed with the drop that you mentioned, as I was more concerned with the slope. That doesn't rise as fast as that showed. And I do appreciate your operating 5-year plan, because the slope of that does seem to increase about roughly 4% per year, which is above 2.5%, but it actually it is in line with what our growth in town has been. And so if we could, if that marries, I see that as an advantage. It gets us off that, and the town and the schools can grow together with what our capacity is to pay without going to a 2.5 override. But we'll see where we go. That's I guess I'm I'm concerned about the 688, but I'm more concerned about not continually coming to the well year after year for another override, for getting over what we can afford. And for me personally, the trigger is the growth rate rather than the 2.5. But I'll throw that out there.
Well, let me just add to that a question. How confident are you that these numbers in the out years are deliverable? In other words, the FY17, more or less 5%, the FY18, more or less 3%, the FY19, more or less 3%, and the FY20, more or less 4%.
Well, it's sort of a loaded question. I'm as confident as can be as long as the assumptions hold. And I think just as we found putting together this 5-year plan, we were a whopping total to 2 months into it, and Chris and Katie go to our health insurance consortium meeting, and what was 4% ends up going to 8%, and then 8% a couple months later goes to 10%. So I think this gives us the best predictor we have at this point in time, and like any 5-year plan, that you have to keep reassessing. You have to keep reassessing it and changing it as the various assumptions change looking out.
So I guess the short answer might be, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, is that it's the best you can project at the moment.
I would say it's yes, and it's probably as good as the Harwich plan, town plan, can project at this moment too. Yeah, it's we're using the same assumptions, and I think that's the important thing, that the two dovetail nicely that way.
Yes, Maureen and then Dana.
Sit here, we'll swap for a second.
I can't get this any more over. Good evening. Thank you for these numbers, because we've been floundering without them, but I want to segue a little off of Peter's comment about expectations. Not to dwell on the past, but looking at the 5-year plan, you know, somehow we'll get through this $700,000 problem, whether it's by override, compromise, absorption, whatever, we will get through this somehow. Just like we did 3 years ago, the $990,000 program, and according to this, with the 5%, that will be another $700,000 next year. That's what this says in black and white. If you add those together, that means the town will be carrying cumulatively $2.5 million additional dollars per year. For any in the audience, although it's a very educated audience that doesn't understand it, once we add on to the assessment, we continue to pay that every additional year. It's not a one-time shot. It doesn't go away. So by next year, from normal projections, the way we would look at it would be $2.5 million more each year from that point on. That's on the money side. As far as expectations go, I've been trying to quantify the qualitative side of this, and certainly the programs and things like that are not my field. But we've all heard many months of people talking about the promise of Monomoy. I think we would all agree that just about everybody who's been in any room for any number of years agreed that the new school was going to be better than the two schools had been individually. Almost everybody seems to completely agree on that. A lot of people feel there was a promise of some fiscal savings. To some degree, that's been acknowledged, to some degree minimalized, but whatever. Many thought that the promise of Monomoy was dedication to a small regional school with small classes and a lot of attention to each student. I'm afraid now, in trying to frame these expectations, that maybe a lot of people might feel that the promise of Monomoy is to be like Nauset, or as good as Nauset. With their larger student base, I don't see how anybody could ever possibly expect a school the size of Monomoy to be able to offer the same number of sections, course offerings, athletics, electives, ancillary benefits, the whole range of things that a school that's almost twice the size, or at least 40% better can, not to mention it's supported by a much larger taxpayer base than Monomoy Regional School is. With that said, if the goal is, see, I'm not sure what the promise of Monomoy is. I'm trying to quantify it. And if part of the promise of Monomoy is to be like Nauset or a mirror image of Nauset, then I don't see how we're ever going to get out of this room. Because I don't see how the towns of Chatham and Harwich can support the kind of operation that goes on between the four towns that support Nauset, not to mention their other program agreements with P-Town and Truro. So that's where I'm stuck, because as I've heard people speak so emotionally and so passionately about their children's needs, something inside me is telling me that a lot of people aren't ever going to be satisfied unless we're as good as Nauset, and we can't afford it, so.
I actually disagree. I actually think we're better than Nauset, and point blank, I think that a smaller school is, and I think what we have at Monomoy Regional High School is a school culture. When you walk in that building, it's family, and there. I think for families that came down from Provincetown this year to go look at us versus Nauset, I think the majority of those children that walked in the door saw the tangible difference. So I think there's far more than just program. You know, it's like there's a gentleman with kids in Chatham that that I've every now and then speak to, and his kids go to Nauset, and they're swimmers. We don't have a swimming pool in either of our towns that that would really support us having a swim team. We can't have everything, but what we can do is we can do what we do great, and I think that's what we do. And I also thought it was really well said by one of our teachers, Lisa Fort Doyle, who came and spoke at public comment. There's you could have the finance committees and select boards at Nauset asking the same question of their superintendent. I mean, we were the first to roll out Mandarin. Sorry, Peter, not Cantonese, but Mandarin. But we were the first to roll out Mandarin, and they happen to follow our lead. We were the first to go and develop as part of the building the new high school a turf field. They're following our lead. So it's so I don't think it's each school district trying to be the other. It's each school district trying to find what their families and students are wanting and to do that well. So I see us as trying to offer a program of studies that at the middle school, high school, and elementary school levels that meet the needs of our families and do that well.
And just as a quick follow-up, I mean, I'm thrilled to hear that. That's not what I always hear in the public. If you're talking about the family atmosphere and everything like that, I absolutely support that. But if you're talking about people trying to compare course for course, number of sections, number of programs to a much larger school, then I get concerned about our expectations. So.
If I could follow up, Noreen, I don't think there's any intention to make a Nauset light. We've got a golden opportunity here, and we're on the threshold of just working our way through 2 or 3 years of growth. My intention, one, I don't think Monomoy should have to depend upon school choice. Nauset isn't dependent, but they've got dozens and dozens of an avenue of school choice children going. I'd like to think in the next 3 or 5 years, if we can work out through this fiscal issue in the next 2 years to stabilize ourselves, that we would bring boys and girls home, Harwich kids and Chatham kids, Lighthouse Middle School kids. That would be a fiscal plus, but at the same time, equally, if not more important for the moms and dads, it would be our school system, Monomoy. So that's at our number at 700, not to grow it. And I think that in the next 3 to 5 years is possible to happen with the, and I see Rich back here, one of our history high school teachers, and a few months ago we used the term, clearly the new construction, also the new Monomoy Middle School, which physically is probably the finest on the Cape, offering, coming from a relatively brand new high school in Chatham, that there's been a certain buzz created around the two towns regarding the region. Specifically, there's a lot of it physical, meaning the new high school. We'd like to enhance that feeling of excitement, and we've got a challenge because we're right in the first couple of years of growth, and we're bumping into fiscal issues that could very easily turn the tide with kids saying, gee, I've heard a lot of negative buzz in the last month or two, and I think I'm going to rethink where I want Johnny to go. That's what we're balancing here, so that we're not signaling the sky is falling, but at the same time, how do we figure this out? Where is that number that we all can afford? How do we define quality in our two towns? And I think it can be done.
Thank you, Terry and Scott. You're up, Dana.
Thanks. I did take the principal up on his invitation to tour the school. I hadn't been through yet, shame on me, but I could actually feel the buzz and could understand it a lot better and so forth, so it made a difference. Just to know where we are, I asked you tonight for a copy of the budget. Now that you voted it, item by item, we just got a copy of the budget voted by the Board of Selectmen as far as the Finance Committee goes, so we're actually getting all the documentation now. And we'll probably have suggestions for both sides in terms of what we can do to try and bring the numbers down. I just went ahead myself and looked at, in FY11, the tax rate was $770 in Harwich, and now it's $897 in the year that we're in right now. And that's a difference for a $300,000 assessment of $381. which is a low assessment. If you take a $600,000 assessment, which isn't too far above median, that's $762 difference from 4 years, and that's quite a significant increase. If we look at just what we're already talking about for FY16, next year's budget, with yours and this side, both sides together, we have the allowed 2.5 increase that we're allowed to go up anyways, the 2.5 we've been talking about since the beginning. Well, that's 22 cents. You know, that's a pretty big jump. We have capital exclusions being recommended. That's 10 cents. We have some new debt. That's a couple more pennies. You know, pretty soon we're up to 932, and we haven't got through the school problem yet. And we haven't got through the additional things that the town administrator wants to do on the town side. It's just, I know for this budget, we had quite the discussion at the end about my personal goal to try and fit the Station 2 in 24 hours a day, right? And we worked
by
that
the
out,
way-
and that was the way I envision all of this working. We still have time to go. If you were to do an override for the schools, that's another 15 cents. You're up to 947 or so, and you still have the on the addition. It's just a 3% CPC charge on the addition. It's a small amount, but it goes up. We have additional school building to hit. The actual construction of the school, more bonds will be issued. That's going to hit at some point. So there's still, if you look at that $300,000 assessment, you're now up to $531 new dollars since 2011. And if you look at the $600,000 assessment, it's $1,062. Just the 1 year jump for the $600,000 assessment is $300 right now from where we are. So that's a big jump, and it's not a puzzle where all the pieces fit together one way just right. It's more like a walkway where we gotta try and either make it a wide walk or a narrow walk or whatever. But I feel, just like Noreen hears from different people, I hear from a lot of taxpayers, and I think that, I know the Finance Committee has been hit with all the columns of numbers, and hope to get yours tomorrow, and we got quite the job ahead of us as I see it.
At the risk of mixing metaphors, you mentioned building construction and the band and the bonds. There's an awful lot, and it's beyond me, Dana, but an awful lot of good news fiscally in that, and if possibly Ed, or I see David Whitcomb, the co-chairs of the building committee, that they've done some research with the regional treasurer that points to potential savings that are tremendous good news regarding our timing and then the construction of, and then instead of bonding out $36 million, it's well millions of dollars less than that this building is coming in on. So to mix and say there's a little bit of good news in that whole process, because that didn't have to be. So at some point, you might like to hear them summarize where that
Use
project
terms
is.
differently. Savings is money you don't have to pay anymore. Digging into your pocket less is a different kind of savings, but in any event.
Sit corrected. There's a term for that, and I feel when you're avoiding cost, there's a,
If you buy 4 Mercedes, you get the 5th one free, you know.
Okay, are there, yes, Linda?
Sorry.
It's okay, we can share. In terms of expenses, and I keep hearing the commentary that this is a new school, et cetera, and we're ironing things out. Did I hear you say that there's going to be another couple of years, next couple of years, could still be some, quote, growing pains? And does that mean that we're going to be having the same conversation next year with another override request before we theoretically get to stability or stop the growth at such an exponential rate? What assurances can you give us that there is an end zone, that there is light at the end of the tunnel and it's not a train coming towards us? Because it keeps seeing that the numbers are going up and up and up, and I think we should have a good school system, and I'm not gonna get into there should be superlative, excellent, this, that, and the other thing, but we should have a good, solid school system. At what point is the line going to become a little less acute and kinda, so that it can be, again, affordable? I mean, Dana just went through a ton of numbers, and even though one person might say, oh, it's only $300 a year, but it's $300 on top of already $4,000. So, you know, while we go through this, it's only a cup of coffee a day and blah, blah, blah. That really trivializes the impact on the citizens' pocketbooks. So I'm still trying to get to I understand that your 5-year plan is your best guess, but in your heart of hearts, how good is it? You know, are we really going to see a leveling off?
I was about to start dancing.
And the Lord said,
I think if we look at this sort of big picture,
I'm trying.
and go back to that $1 million of school choice not being there, one of the things that we were able to put in place this year, and for the parents that are listening to this, I want to emphasize that we were having discussions of putting this in place before it became a budget thing, is to shift from the 8-block schedule that we were running to a 7-block schedule. There were students and staff alike that came to school committee meetings saying, hey, the schedule that's in place isn't working. So when we looked into that, it just happened to be the same time that the budget process was kicking in. That shift, looking at an 8 to a 7 block, is about $250,000 in savings. So, and it's as long as that's the new norm for the high school, those savings are there year after year. So that $1 million has closed by $250,000. What we're doing to kind of balance out the FY16 budgets, we're using more school choice than you typically would, and I would say that the amount of school choice that we're applying to FY16 beyond what typically would roll year after year is that bit that I think has the potential to need to get made up as we develop the FY17 budget to be at that place where we're tracking. It's like we're trying to make up for $1 million that wasn't there at the start of FY16, and until it's made up, you're really not at that new norm to track forward.
so when do you have a gut feel as to when that $1 million is sort of gonna be made up overall so that we can be on track?
Well, it's.
I'm trying to get to how many more years of this do we have to go through?
I would say in this, the presentation that you have here, there's FY16 and FY17 are the 2 years where there's large increases, and those increases are compensating for lack of reserves to backfill those increases. And then then ideally we're at that new norm tracking forward in the out years.
One of the things I keep hearing on both sides is the idea to get down to 2.5, and I guess I'll just remind everybody that that's only an option. I mean, we could go with a 0. I mean, a 2.5 is increases people's taxes anyways, and it's only a portion that doesn't have to get voted on by the citizens. The next big tax revolution in Massachusetts isn't going to replace 2.5 with a higher number. It's going to replace 2.5 with a 0, so the taxpayers get to weigh in on every dollar at some point. And the more we keep using that 2.5, 2.5, 2.5, the closer we get to what I've seen before in past years is just a taxpayer kind of shutdown. They just say, all right, we've had enough of this, and they start voting no on a bunch of stuff, and that really tends to bring the message back to everybody that's appointed and elected up here to all right, we got to really fix this. So we run that risk the more and more we keep making that number drive up, I feel.
Before I ask my two questions, are there any other questions, Ed?
Yeah. I want to congratulate the school board on doing what you did. I'm not sure, as a past school board member, I would have been emotionally prepared to do it, but I want to thank you for that. I guess my question is, we're at a point where we have some felt a large jump in the assessment to the town, although several weeks ago our town administrator had presented us with a balanced budget which fully incorporated that bump without having to recommend go to an override. But what I see, one of the things that concerns me in this budget and several budgets going forward is the continued use of the excess and deficiency money, which I think over time you use that, but you don't use it to support an operating budget. Several years ago, the Harwich Board of Selectmen moved to take out what we call free cash out of our operating budget and not use it to support that, only to support capital and other one-time expenditures. It's interesting if you look at the use of excess and deficiency money this year at $600,000 in smaller amounts over the next several years. In that year where the assessment jumps by $1 million because of the large capital outlays that are needed for the two roofs, had you not used the excess and deficiency money to support the operating fund but banked it, you would have been able to cover that jump without having a spike in the assessment to the town. It would have been a more normal increase, and I think that's something going forward is the sort of planning that I'd like to see, and I've pushed for in our own town budget to do.
At least in a regional school district budget, you'll notice that we're hovering at what will be about 4% before we use the 600, and then it drops down. We anticipate money would roll in at the end of a budget year, so it goes back up, and then you see in those out years we're using less than the 600. We're trying to deliberately use less to allow that excess and deficiency to creep back up towards 4%. There's actually a state limit that we can't have that excess and deficiency creep over 5%, or automatically anything in addition above and beyond 5% rolls back to the town. Now there is provisions within the law that would allow the school district to establish a stabilization account similar to what the town has, and move some funds from that you can move and shift from excess and deficiency into stabilization. But just as the town, ideally between its stabilization and free cash, has that reserve to go and build in on buffer some challenging years, that's what you want to see there for the regional school district as well.
Okay. And then, if I could, just some other comments on sort of in response to some things that have been said. I've wondered, this thought of having an override, what the cost would be to the average and medium priced house in town, and so I went and asked the assessor what the median assessed value was in town, and that's the value at which half of the properties are below and the other half are above. And that median price is $327,000, not the $600,000 that Mr. DeCosta indicated.
I have both. I have 300 ends.
Yeah.
I have both.
But you said the 600 was the median. and it's $327.
Above the median.
And the average price, which is the point where half the value is above and half the value is below in the properties, is I think he said 440,000 is the average price home, assessed value home.
I think I should also chime in and just bring up that there is one other cost in terms of having an override, and that's for many of the families in the district. The very fact that there is the potential for an override, and the worry and concern of what if an override doesn't pass, has them in a situation of school choice, worried, anxious, and I think that one of that, going back to that promise of Monomoy, we want to see families from Harwich and Chatham staying here, not to have families from Harwich and Chatham anxious about the quality of their schools and heading elsewhere. So I've spent a lot of time over the last few weeks just trying to talk to families about what we want to see happen in our schools, and I think far too many have heard me say that that I do believe, I'm an optimist, that rational minds will prevail at the end of the day. But I know that there are many families that are worried about the schools with an override.
Peter?
I'm going back to the E&D account since you brought it up, Ed. And what I prefer to see in the future, and I understand your numbers here, and by the way, I think you get down to, from a high now, about $600,000 supporting the budget, if you will, to something that, is like it gets down to $45,000 in the out year of FY20. I'd like to see us if we can figure out going forward once we get through this year. Larry, I think you mentioned it about looking at the growth rate, if you will, and kind of using that as a guideline. And if we can't live within that sort of number, that maybe we go back to the E&D account and we use that to help us, all of us, to balance that out as we go forward. So let's just pretend it's 4%. Just pretend that we could consistently live over a 4 or 5 year period of time with what that number is and help use that. I understand you need to build it to a certain extent, but there's got to be a way to bring some stabilization to this on both sides, and I think that's one approach. It's not the total answer because there's only so much money in there, if you will. So I'd like to see that as a sort of, as we go forward, as if we can agree to what that commitment would be to try and, for both of us to plan. We all need to plan. As far as the override goes, what I want to say there is, town meeting is the first week in May. All of this will be taken up at that point in time. A couple of weeks later, we have the ballot, the election, if you will. So certainly by the end of May, we're all going to know the answer. And as far as I'm concerned, if your team and this team up here come to agreement on the approach to take to it, I don't see where it would fail myself. I'd be immensely surprised if it did not pass at the ballot, if you will. And because if we're jumping up, this kind of a number this year, it is, let's hope, it's a one-time sort of hit. And that hit lives with us forever. So one approach, as we all know, is to do it as an override because it is permanent. On the other side, we need to look at what the town government is trying to get done. Ed mentioned that we had a balanced budget from the town administrator that included covering the schools, but quite frankly, there are some things on the town side, when it comes to an additional EMT and a police officer, things we've been delaying doing, and we have needs as well. So, I think we both have to consider that. And the important thing is that over the coming weeks, we come together and we go to town meeting with a unified approach. And I think we all would be committed to doing that. I don't know why we wouldn't want to do that.
Yeah, we don't want to make our lives any more difficult than they have to be. I would make one comment. Peter mentioned the one-time hit. This is the second one-time hit, and what we're hoping to avoid is a third and a fourth and a fifth one-time hit, because pretty soon you can't sweep it under the rug and say it's a one-time hit. But I had two questions, if there are no other questions from Selectmen and FinCom. Yes.
Just one comment. It's not a one-time hit. It's a permanent hit. So I really don't like saying that $1 million from a couple of years ago was a one-time hit. It was not a one-time hit. We've paid that every single year since. And the 688 is not a one-time hit. It'll be, every single year will be paid. So can we not use the one-time hit on this because it's not?
So you're saying it's the gift that keeps on giving?
It's the gift that keeps on giving.
But I think in all fairness, now, I wasn't here at the time, but to the best of my understanding, the first hit that keeps coming up, this $900,000, that was primarily driven by the Harwich children that once upon a time were in the Chatham school system, now coming back as Monomoy and the town of Harwich paying for the Harwich children.
But for whatever, for whatever the reason may have been, Mr. Carpenter, it's still money.
It is.
And it's still a hit to the pocketbook.
But the kids are still here, and they will always be here.
Yeah, but it's still, it was not, it was, yeah, they won't always be here. Hopefully they'll graduate.
And hopefully more will come.
But it's not a one-time hit. It's, once you do something like this, a 2.5 override is a permanent, every single year expense. It's not a capital exclusion. So I'd really like us not to use one-time hits here. Your comments then, Mr. Chair.
Good, thank you. Yes, Ed?
Well, just a little bit of elaboration, you know. Running a town is pretty much like any other business, you know. When I go to my lumber yard for supplies, if they're not making ends meet, they raise their prices and make some more money for them for the year. Well, at the end of the year, they don't give up their price increase because they paid that year's increase. Price increases stay in effect because their costs that have gone up that force them to raise their prices stay in effect. If we find that we can't provide the services that we feel we need to as a town and schools, and want to maintain those, because our expenses have gone up, we need to increase our revenues, and it isn't that it's a one-time hit, a one-time price increase that goes away, because the expenses that force that increase don't ever go away.
Well, of course, that analogy only goes so far, because that same lumberyard may delay buying equipment that they need, may lay off people. And so you have to be sure you explain the full analogy.
And you're always one to say that we're not a business, Ed. So now you're using the business analogy.
Yeah, well.
I think we're getting off track here, I'm going to ask my questions now, whether there are any further from the FinCom and Board of Selectmen or not.
Yeah, they better be good ones.
Yeah, one of them's really good. We would very much appreciate, and I sent Katie an email yesterday, I think, about this, and I know she was out of the office today, but an electronic Excel copy of the forecast so that we can play around with it. That'd be great. And then, I know we want to move on and we don't want to dwell on the past, and we certainly don't want to live in the past, but I think it would be helpful for the townspeople in Harwich and maybe Chatham to have the background of what the combined school budgets were for Chatham and Harwich the year prior to regionalization compared to what is being proposed to be spent now, just to have that perspective.
I think we can do that. In fact, I think somewhere, I actually, probably somebody's holding my handout. I had printed out what Harwich's budget was that somebody had emailed me from days gone by.
Yeah, I'm not trying to put you on the spot.
But I think the complexity of it, and there's this note in the Harwich where in FY12 before we regionalized, there's sort of a note in a memo that I'd even have to go back and research. Like, I have the budget, but I don't have the memo, because the complex piece is that benefits were carried on the town side. So you had, so before we regionalized, benefits were on town side. So we see school budget here, but benefits are over there. as a regional school district, benefits are with us, and so sometimes it
No,
muddles the
Yeah,
comparison.
just to cut to the chase here, Scott, and I don't mean to cut you off, but I'm sure that there are other people who want to make some comments and ask you questions. They can be normalized, and they should be normalized so that we're comparing apples to apples. And I'm not asking you to produce the numbers tonight, but it sure would be helpful if we could get them at some point.
And I'm just saying that some of the challenge is I would have to work with Chris, because I don't understand how I can see the school piece of it, but I don't see the benefit side of the equation.
Best effort.
I think I might
Terry?
have that.
Just a note of optimism, Dana, I like your numbers, I like to compare an average home, kind of like mine versus, say, the 6, but I think there's a lot of potential, and Peter, I appreciate your comments that between now and 4 or 5 weeks, we can come to some way that we're both not stabbed to death fiscally, but move on without an override. On the other hand, there's a very delicate balance between taxpayer protection, and personally, as a taxpayer for 50 years, I don't think I'm overtaxed. I haven't joined the golf course, and I don't play golf, but part of my taxes go for those folks that do. I don't sail, I did, but part of my taxes go for improvements and betterments for the tourists and sailors in town. I think that's great. All the other avenues that I may not participate in is part of this package of public service, the services that are out there that you have to be protective of, the taxes. On the other hand, optimistically, going back just 3 or 4 years, we had a need in town with the high school strongly hinting that they're going to fail in their construction of that. And the town gathered. They came to town meeting, they were presented with, happened to be on the Harwich High School Building Needs Committee, and a report was given. The town voted almost overwhelmingly to say, let's move for a new construction. And the ballot reflected that, and fortunately for us, we regionalized, and Chatham did likewise. That's all folks out there that are our taxpayers, they're optimistic, and I think the vast majority of them were people living in homes around $350,000 or $400,000 that said, this is gonna cost me some money. I don't know what that is, $80, $100 a year, and they said yes to that. I hope as we move towards this solution in May, that we can get together and hopefully avoid that, but if it has to be, I'll take, along with others, the story of Monomoy and where we've begun in just 2.5 years, in the hopes that they would say yes to this, so that we can continue to try to stabilizing and also get to a new normal that we all can live with. So hopefully that could be, when we're hearing bad news, it'll bring the best out in all of us.
Thank you, Terry. Just for clarification, both the golf operation and the harbors collect sufficient fee revenue to offset their fully loaded costs. So the taxes aren't being used for those those particular recreational facilities.
I was corrected twice, sitting down. Thanks, Skip, yeah.
I was
That's
careful.
pretty good average, though.
Terry, I was very careful to use the word clarify, not correct.
Yeah.
Well,
My metaphor, I
That's
could have
true,
used other
that's,
departments. that my taxes
that's
go.
true to a certain extent, Skip, but, we've moved towards that in recent years, but there still are a few bond measures at the golf course that are being supported by general taxes on every property in town. And the recent dredging of Allen Harbor, a good portion of that is being supported by a 2.5 override on every property in town, not only the users.
Well, just to further elaborate on the finances of the harbors.
Yeah, I think we can move on.
So I was only half wrong.
Yeah, I think,
Okay, you want to open it up to?
yeah, let's open up
Okay.
okay.
And
Mr. Chairman?
again, when you approach the mic, if you would please state your name, street, and town.
Mr. Chairman, Lou Urbano, Riverside Drive, West Harwich. First, let me state I commend Peter for starting the meeting in a very conciliatory tone in terms of the questions. Unfortunately, it's starting to degrade again, and that needs to stop. I think my wife did a beautiful job when she started today, and I applaud her for saying we need to live together afterwards. The one thing that I've heard, getting back to the issue, is the schools are going to get better in a layman's tone. If I were a parent today, I would be asking, is there something wrong with the school right now? Are they not getting a good education right now? Is it average? Is it poor? How much better is it going to be because we're spending $800,000 plus 2.5 or 1.2 million, 1.4 million? Someone's going to have to correct my facts. Ed, you seem to be the fact corrector tonight, so you may want to do that. Where's the scale? What I want to see as a citizen is very simply, I want good schools for Harwich. Noreen, your question wasn't answered. I'm sorry. I don't know whether we want to be Nauset or whether we don't want to be Nauset. I have to watch it on TV to get an understanding. But I think the answer was we can be better because we're friendlier in the school. And that's not quantitative to me. What I want to know is with that 800,000, what's going to change? Next year when we're sitting here, what 5 characteristics has our school superintendent given us, what 5 criteria that we're going to judge how much better it is? 5 years from now, are we going to be saying better? Yes, we need quantifiable. Because why are we getting more AP courses? Is it because if I offer more AP courses, my standings rise? If I can get more students to take, which is okay, but tell us that. Tell us what the quantitative improvements are going to be. And I don't think the citizens of this town are going to object. But I don't know how to pay for superlative, nor will I use myself as an example of what I'm willing to do. Therefore, the whole town should do what I'm willing to do. If I'm willing to pay more taxes, by goodness, everybody should be willing to pay for more taxes. Wrong. Right now, the town is supporting each student to $16,000 per student. Right now, that average is $2,400 per family. Right now, that's supporting 700 families that have students. 10,000 residents are supporting 700 families. So therefore, we do need to look at what it's costing us, Dana. You're absolutely correct. And at which point are we paying too much unless we know what we're getting? I'm not willing to pay more for the word superlative. Thank you.
Thank you, Lou.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is David Whitcomb. I was an early advocate for the Monway regionalization, and I'm currently the co-chairman of the building committee with Mr. McManus.
Mr. Whitcomb, could you give us your street address in town, please?
And I live in Chatham, and my street address is 41 Indian Trail.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So I'd like to go back maybe and talk about partnerships, and especially the first one, the partnership between the school and the rest of the town operating budgets in Harwich. I've got some papers here that perhaps you'd like to see them. They're from your town warrant of 2014. I'm going to read some of the numbers. I can pass them out to you, or I can just go wing it, whatever you prefer.
Whatever you can fit into 2 minutes, you're welcome to.
I didn't know the finance committee was going to be here, so I did 6. We can share.
Pass those down. Skip,
Okay, we'll try to do this in 2 minutes. I think if you look at page 107 of your warrant from last year, it talks about the town operating budget. It gives the figures from FY12, which was 16.7 million, to FY15, which doesn't include this year, which was 19.3 million. That was an increase of $2.6 million, or 15.5% on your town operating budget. If you go down to line 103 and 106, you'll see the Barnstable County retirement figures and the group health insurance figures. The two of them total $3 million, In 2013, that $3 million was shifted from the town budget to the school budget, which is probably where a lot of that savings that you were expecting came from. If you go to the town school budget on page 103 in your warrant, the actual town budget was 19.9 in 2012, and in 2015 it was 20.2 million, or a 1.5% increase. So I'd just like to repeat that the town operating budget increased 15.5% during those 4 years, but the town school budget increased only 1.5%. Now, granted, we've got a big nut coming up this year, and I'll try and I think it's the school's turn now to maybe try to get some of that money back. The good news is, and I'll try to hurry. The good news you don't hear much about.
You're actually out of time, and there are other people waiting to speak, Mr. Whitcomb.
I hope someday that the Finance Committee and the Board of Selectmen would like to know how much we actually are saving on the school building project.
Thank you.
Two quick questions. What's making me nervous, Mr. Carpenter, by the way, thank you for all your work. The assessments looking forward over
Yes,
the years.
Could you please let us know your name
Oh, I'm
and
sorry.
address?
Dorothy Arter, Pleasant Lake Avenue, Harwich.
Thank you.
The progressions over the years, 5, 6, 7, 8, seem to be from your remarks based on school choice additions and retirements. I don't think you can base projections of budgetary matters on two things that are completely unknown. Okay. Second question, I understand from asking around town that Harwich actually does not have a great ranking of, like the MCAs and things, testing ranking. In the schools, other schools are much higher. Can you explain that? That's it.
Thank you. Do you want to respond or not?
Well, just a couple quick things. In this, looking at early retirement, we know who we anticipate would retire, and we can project. We can take that and project out in the future years. In terms of school choice, there's a presumption here that our school choice numbers will be maintained roughly what they are currently, so that we have that projected out in this. We actually have a slight decrease in the anticipated school choice revenues because as we contract at Harwich Elementary School, there's the loss each year of about $30,000 in school choice. In terms of the question about MCAS scores, and I think this gets to a comment that Lou made. Those are things that we want to work on. We want to see the school district see students' test scores increase. They're not where I want them. I know they're not where our teachers want them and where our families want them. And that's one of the reasons why, as we were putting together this current year's budget, the FY15 budget, where we see our scores slumping initially was at the middle school levels, and to see us go in and put emphasis on increasing our math our math instruction, and ideally in turn see that increase those math scores at middle school, that then become better scores as the students go up into high school.
Thank you, Mr. Carpenter.
Dean Hedersted, 6 Cranberry Hollow Lane, Harwich, Massachusetts.
Microphone.
I'm sorry. I turned.
Dean Hedersted, 6 Cranberry Hollow Lane, Harwich, Mass. I'm disappointed. I really am. I'm looking at a budget that in fact forecasts an override every year from here on out, including this year. And we're going to be back here doing the same thing every year. And I think everybody in this room has stated such in so many words. But one thing I think is very evident, and I think Ed touched on it, and I think some of your other Board of Selectmen have touched on it. It's very interesting that the surplus amount of monies, which are equaling about 1.4, maybe close to $1.5 million a year. In the out years, you're using less than $150,000 of it. It should be used to support the schools like it has been up till this point. FY16, you're using $600,000. From there out, you're using $150,000. There's something wrong. I don't see any effort to make a budget that is close to what we both want. You're not even getting there, and we're going to be here again next year. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean. Did you want to respond to that, or you're not compelled to?
Jeff Shortis, I'm from Chatham, 20 Indian Hill Road. I'm the father of 2 children in the Monomoy School District, and first want to say today thank you to all the families of Harwich for making my children's first year in the combined school system a wonderful year. I wish I was here tonight having a discussion with you all about how we make our school system even better than it is this year. We're not. We're having a discussion about how we make it good enough. Superintendent Carpenter proudly stated we were the first school district to have Mandarin and possibly Latin in the middle school. We will now have the honor of being the first school system to remove it 1 year after introducing it. What we're looking at here is a school system that has a lack of vision. And we're also looking at a town that I believe also has a lack of vision. The reason why every year you have these budget challenges is because people are choosing not to come to your school system. They're choosing not to come to your school system because you cut it and you do not want to fund it. The taxpayers of this town will be served when the school committee and when the selectmen invest in the school system, do not cut it, and create a better environment where there's a real buzz, where people want to come to your schools and not leave it. And I implore you to reconsider the school committee's recommendation for the budget cuts. There should be a level service budget. No teachers should be removed from the system, and only then will the taxpayers be served. I am a Republican. I do not like paying taxes, but it requires vision to grow out of these things, and you don't do that by feeling bad for yourselves. And I implore this community to stop doing that. Thank you.
I would respectfully ask future speakers to not make disparaging comments about either town or indulge in ad hominem attacks. This is the time for civil discourse, not name-calling. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Good evening. My name is Joy Jordan. I live at 6 Connecticut Avenue in Harwich. Thank you all for all of your hard work, both committees up there, the school committee, and Superintendent Carpenter. I'm a little disheartened by the overall impression that we shouldn't want our schools to be better, because that seems really basic to me, but it's not just about me, it's about the whole town. And I think one of the most critical things we can do is keep our kids here. I don't think everyone necessarily agrees with me. I think some people think it might be better to let them go, but I think it's important to keep our children going to school in the town in which they live. And we live in an environment of school choice, like it or not. That means that kids have the choice, and they will choose to go to other places. And someone asked about how do you measure if it's a successful district? Well, to me, one of the biggest measures of success is if the children are choosing to stay here, and if children from other towns are choosing to come here. And I think that if we maintain a strong district, a high-achieving district, let's have high goals. Let's not just make it good enough. And if we do that, not only will we keep our own kids, we will attract kids from other towns. And it's not because we want to be just like another district. We want to be the best district we can be. And doing that will bring money to the town. It will keep money from leaving the town, and it will benefit all of us taxpayers in the end.
Thank you.
My name is Richard Gunderson. I live on Hiawatha Road, Harwichport. I had numerous discussions with people in an attempt to try and come up with a concept of meeting a $700,000 excess over the 2.5% for the schools. And my rationale was that the promise of Monomoy, as it's been publicized sufficiently by Scott, is that there would be an attempt to try and bring back as many of the 1.8, maybe it's less now, but back in fiscal year 15, it was $1.87 million worth of expenses for charter school and choice out. So I thought, well, if his promise is only 25% good, or even half good, we could bring back a lot of money. So let's try and figure a way that we can come up with that money in our budget for this year with an attempt that next year excess funds would be not spent for those school choice decisions because the promise is working. And I'm wondering, when is the promise going to work? But if it did work, money would return, or money wouldn't, not as much money would go out. Sort of a Terry Russell cost avoidance situation. So it seemed to me that it could work. Maybe not in 1 year, but maybe a year and a half, maybe 2. Same thing with retirements. I know it takes time for those to take effect. Early retirements, incentives, and all that. What I was trying to do is eliminate a permanent override. And it doesn't look like that's going to work because there really isn't anything in your projections for your expenses for choice out or charter that go down. They keep going up in your out years. And I'm wondering, why don't you foresee results from the promise of Monomoy that would help pay for your budget in future years? Thank you.
Just to chime in on that, Richard, it's a good question. One of the things that I want to point out is there's a reduction of 2 staff at the middle school, and the conversations that I've had with the school committee and with my administrative team is we lose to the charter school a number of students at the end of 5th grade. At the end of 5th grade, they leave us, but we didn't adjust. We haven't been adjusting the staffing in grade 6 and 7 to account for that. So you see lower class sizes. One of the things that's built into this is if we see fewer kids going to the charter school, it positions us to be able to go and bolster the staffing at the middle school. It's that balance. If we're having less money going out, more students back in classrooms at the middle school, that there's that ability to see the students staying with us, and then justifying that we now have saved the money to pay for the staff to go and support the 6th grade. So it's one of those things that ideally I'd like to see the pattern that happened year 1. We saw a significant number of students, particularly at the high school, not leave us, and that helped us. That's what we see when we got the initial numbers for this year. There's less school choice dollars that are flowing, that are starting to flow out of the district. Where ideally we want to see more of it happen is on students that are heading to charter schools, because if we can keep for every 1 student that's going to a charter school, that saves the district $15,000, or allows us to go and bring back $15,000 worth of tuition. It's the students that are choicing out to Nauset or DY are going at $5,000 a shot, but still, there was a significant swing this year, and that's something we hope to see continue. And I definitely think, again, getting back to Lewis, and when I presented, Skip asked, could we provide some barometers early on in one of our presentations here? That's a clear barometer. How many of our 5th graders are we keeping in 6th grade? How many of our 8th graders are showing up with us in 9th grade? How has that tracked from before regionalization to now?
Thank you, Scott.
Good evening. Ken Hager, Cannon Hill Drive, Harwich.
Nauset is frequently referenced in these discussions, and I think it's important to look at Nauset being one end of the spectrum, look at DY as the other end of the spectrum. Certainly, from a tangible standpoint, that's difficult to clarify, but there is a perception that DY is not supported by the community there, and that's why I left it. I moved to Harwich last year because of all the excitement about the Monomoy School. I didn't want my children to go through DY. And as a result, I tried to school choice initially, and I couldn't get in because they had already taken the maximum amount allowed. That encouraged me. There was a lot of demand for this district. So I then went house shopping. I wanted to get my kids into the school one way or the other. The result for the seller of the house that I eventually bought, who had owned the home since 1983, was that I ended up in a bidding war for their home. So this elderly couple greatly benefited from the demand of the school system. I think it's easy to look at this as a tax issue, but the school system is the rising tide that lifts all boats. Our homes are the boats. And by having a school system with the perception that it's supported by the community, increases the demand for our homes, raises all of our property values, whether you're selling, want to dip into that equity, the value is more important, I think, than your property tax bill. I'm sure we all know that our taxes on the Cape, unless you live in Sandwich, are relatively low compared to certainly the rest of the region, if not the country. So I just want everybody to look at this from another angle as well, which is that the school system is directly tied to our property values. It's a market in itself, the real estate market, and right now our town is creating a market of uncertainty. And we all know how markets react to uncertainty. People have a choice as to which homes they can buy. Brewster has a very relative average sale price to ours, so they could go to Brewster and think that that isn't going to be supported, that the system there is supported more than it is in Harwich. So keep the demand for our homes here.
Thank you, Mr. Hager.
Hi, I'm sorry I have a cold. Elizabeth Harder from Surrey Lane in Harwich. Everyone I've talked to in town since this started agrees we all want this to be the best school possible. But you have to understand, this is not West Palm Beach. The people here who are the retirees everyone so lovingly talks about, most of them are on fixed incomes. So raising their taxes is not, an inconvenience. It's a question of whether they can afford to continue to heat their homes after this god-awful winter, whether they can afford food, whether they can afford to pay for their medicines. If you don't believe that, look at who's bagging your groceries at Stop and Shop. I feel guilty every single time I go in there and someone I should be helping to their car is putting my heavy cans in a plastic bag for me. Now, we all want this school to be beautiful and extensively incredible. Back in the day, 100 years ago when I was in high school and things were more affordable, I went to such a school. And until I moved up here, I was very involved in that alumni association. And it is a school that teaches Chinese and Latin. It is a school that has lacrosse teams and volleyball teams and any extracurricular activity the students want. And the tuition at that school is $46,000 a year. It's a private school. Should every student in the world have the ability to get that education? Yes. But that is not something that can be done on a town level. It is something that I don't even think can be done on a state level. It's something that should be done on a federal level, where the tax money from the government can help allay the townspeople. Harwich residents cannot afford to spend $46,000 a year on a student. But if the federal government were doing its job, then we would be able to afford it. And to those of you who are Republican, you want your kid to have a good school, stop voting Republican.
There we go.
There we go.
We just went over a cliff on that one.
Good evening, Justin Tavano, Queen Anne Road, Harwich. First thing I'd like to say is I didn't find Mr. Shortis's comments offensive or disparaging whatsoever. And if you did, as a member of the board, then I think you should take a nice hard look in the mirror and practice as you preach. But my comments...
Keep a civil tongue in your head.
It's conveniently said. I think that the school system should be a cornerstone of our community. And to just accept a good school system, I think, is just an atrocious attitude. This is a great community. I was born and raised in this community. I moved back here to raise my family in this community because it's great. And to just accept any sort of service that we have here as just good is just a poor attitude. We have an opportunity to have a great system here. And I'm sorry, but if you're just okay with good, then there's other good places to live. This is a great place, and we should strive to make it great.
Dana?
I know that you know a lot about, Mr. Tavano, you know a lot about police and fire as well, and that's part of the balancing act. We're trying to make them all good, and that's where we are right at the moment. And we'll get through it, and we'll do it, but there's four corners on this cornerstone. Thank you.
I absolutely appreciate and can understand the battle that you guys all serve, and I know that your position can be thankless at times.
Gee, thank you.
But I think we have the means to do it in this town.
Before I recognize you, I believe you spoke before the meeting, this part of the meeting
So did the
started.
gentleman before me.
He did.
Different topic.
He made it.
Thank you.
He made an announcement on a different topic. If you're unwilling to yield to the people behind you before you have another bite at the apple,
Thank you. Thank you.
okay, go ahead.
My name is Megan Smith. I'm a resident. I live on Cindy's Lane in Harwich. I do have just one clarification question. Is this a Board of Selectmen meeting or a FinCom meeting?
It's a joint meeting.
Because I thought the joint meeting was on Wednesday.
There's another joint meeting on
I
Wednesday.
just wanted to clarify who's
For-
in charge of the meeting.
Let me speak to that, if I may.
Is this on my 2 minutes, though?
No.
Thank you.
It's not. It's on my 2 minutes. We had scheduled a joint meeting on Wednesday to hear budget input from all the departments, including the school board. Before we scheduled these meetings coming up on tonight. And so, in fact, I see Burkhart behind you, Mr. Burkhart, and Burkhead,
Mr.
I'm
Burkhead.
sorry, Burkhead. And I know that on email communication that was notified people of a meeting on Wednesday night. I've canceled that meeting on Wednesday evening because it made no sense to have the same discussion 2 days in a row. That we're having it tonight, and it would just seem to be too much to ask our friends, Mr. Carpenter, Mr. Russell, to appear.
Katie and I
2
thank you
evenings.
because the Chatham Finance Committee has now filled our dance card for Wednesday night.
Thank you. And so we will not be holding that because they came in at the same, we created the schedule separately, but I just saw they were 2 days apart, so.
Thank you. I was just curious about that.
Who's in charge of the meeting? Who's running the meeting?
The meeting tonight's being run by Skip because we have joint meetings going forward. We decided to rotate the chairmanship of the joint meeting. So I chaired the last meeting. Mr. Patterson chaired this meeting, is chairing this meeting.
Seriously. Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate that. I just wanted to point out a couple observations. The town of Harwich, currently their tax rate, there are 351 towns and cities in Massachusetts. Of those 351 towns and cities, 32 have a lower tax rate. We're in the lowest 10% of the state. I understand that tax rate is not so simple as a flat rate. I understand that there's an assessment issue. I understand there's a cost of living issue. However, it's interesting to note that some of the most expensive towns, including numbers 1, 3, and 4, it could be 1, 2, and 4, I apologize if I mix those up, are in the highest tax rates of the state. Some of the towns with a median house value of 1.4 million have over 12% tax rate. We've been enjoying such a low tax rate for so long. I think it is time for people to consider what direction this town wants to head in. Do we want to be the seasonal secondary home town? Do we want to be a family-friendly town that invests in their police, in their fire, in their school departments, so it's a safe environment for families to grow up in? I also want to point out that in fiscal year 2001, we had a tax rate of 9.66. In 2002, we had a tax rate of 8.90. We survived. And again, I realize that the situations at the time were different. There was bubbles. I realize there were tax bubbles. There were assessment issues. But we survived. We'll survive again. One final observation. I grew up in the Worcester area. I did not have the luxury of growing up near the beach like this. My husband grew up here in Harwich. I am one of 4 children. All 3 of them went to my town's high school. I went to a private school, not in my town. I live in Harwich. My 3 siblings still live back in Leicester. My husband grew up here in Harwich. He went to all the Harwich schools. We chose to move here, live here, raise our children, bring our tax dollars back here. We chose that. I chose to leave my hometown and come here because I wanted my family here.
Good evening, Bill Burkhead. I live at 143 South Meadow Road, Plymouth, Massachusetts. My wife would say that I live at 75 Oak Street in Harwich, where I love to be. Thank you so much. I know this is a lot of heavy-duty stuff. I represent that person from the outside looking in, the Plymouthian who had a good job and a good living, but was attracted to Monomoy and the Monomoy Promise and what this great school and opportunity would be. I applied here, and I relentlessly pursued that job, and I'm fortunate to be here. Now, moving forward, I think a lot of parents and students make those same decisions on great schools. They come and go based on their needs, similar to mine, and are attracted here for those same reasons. A few meetings ago, I articulated, I thought, the best I could in a short amount of time, some of the characteristics that make great schools. And I'm willing to do that. I offered an opportunity for all of you to come down and visit me one-on-one, take you for a tour. I know you're busy, but that opportunity is still open. I thank you, Mr. DeCosta, for coming down. I thought we had a great time, a great visit. My goal tonight is just to simply, and the goal of that tour, is that a lot of numbers are being thrown on the board. Okay, you need to see what a quality education is and a great education is by living it, seeing it when the students are there. And I really think that you would be impressed by that. So when you do vote on these important items, that you take that into account by actually visiting the schools and seeing what we have to offer. And we pay really high taxes in Plymouth. We have good schools, okay, close to great schools there. They're on their way, and my kids benefit from that. You've got a real good value here for the tax dollar, and I can compare the two quite honestly. Real quick story, as I know I only got a minute left. I told this story before to the school committee. Real quick, my daughter and I, who's a senior at Plymouth North, we're looking at some of the tweets sent out by our school. We had a sock hop with our older kids, taught our younger kids in the district how to, do the 50s dances, do the grease lightnings, things like that. And then we also looked at our weekly Friday Focus that you all get. And we started looking at the pictures at our school and all the great things they do. And again, to answer the question earlier, these are all weekly examples of great things that happen in great quality schools. My daughter looked at me and said, "Dad, I want to go to your school." Okay? If it's good enough for my own daughter, I would hope that it's good enough for yours. And I think that's what we judge a quality education on. And I do want, there's been a lot of misconceptions floated out there based on the budget. My recommendation would be that the board consider Mr. Clark's very well thought out budget that supported our school budget at a discounted rate that was brought up tonight with the cuts in place. And it was my understanding at that point, I could be corrected if I'm wrong, there were no town losses on that budget, and it would not consider an override. As you know, perception is very important. People leave when they know there's going to be an override or potential to not get voted. Please consider that very much. Lastly, a little bit about good to great. I've heard a lot of conversations about good. I recommend you read Jim Collins' book, Good to Great, one of my favorites, where he says the enemy of good, or the enemy of great is good. People like good schools. They like good jobs. They like good people. That's why they never become great. They get complacent with good. I'm afraid we
Mr.
are becoming
Burkhead,
complacent for good.
I'm afraid we're out of time.
Okay. One
Thank
last
you.
closing, thank you. One last closing thing.
thank
A lot
you
of
very
promise.
much.
My promise to Monomoy, because there's been a lot of, what is the promise to Monomoy? I say tonight, we all start making promises now, on record. My promise to Monomoy is that you will have my relentless dedication and commitment as principal to bring a great school to our students, school, parents, and community. Thank you.
Okay?
Yes.
Okay. Jill Eastman, 79 West Tupelo Drive here in Harwich. I recognize several on these committees that have been here the whole time that I've lived in this town, well over 30 years, and it's nice to see you still doing this kind of thing. I just am asking both committees who have seen so much change in Harwich, and I started to make a list here between I think we started out poorly with a middle school that ended up getting condemned, but we don't do that anymore. Way back when we had to get the kids out of school in October. I don't want to go there. Anyway, we built a middle school. We built an elementary school. We built a new section on the library. We had a fire station. I'm out of order here, I'm sure, in terms of what's going next. But then the fire station, and then the police station, and all of this time in that building sequence, I started teaching here in Harwich 15 years ago. And that whole 15 years, there have been issues at the high school between heating, and I can't tell you how many barrels go around Harwich High School in those 15 years where we were plugging up leaks. And I in no way want to judge the custodians, because I'm going to tell you, and our former superintendent was very proud to tell all of us at one point that because of the great work that our custodians did, the state said that they would pay an extra $700,000 for our school because they did such a great job taking care of that school since 1964. Because they went up and cleaned you people went and wired that school for computers yourselves on weekends. This is an amazing town to be able to do this kind of stuff. So I'm asking you not to look at all of those former things that we did in this town and compare it to building a school and getting it to run. You can build a police station and make it run right away, right off the bat. You got a new police station, it's going to run the same. You got a fire station, it's going to run the same. You got a library, it's going to run the same. You do not join two schools with so much change going on, joining contracts, buying equipment. You cannot do that and think you're going to get the same result as level, we're going to budget this $4 million out or whatever it is. You can't do that and think that the school is going to be able to do the same thing that a fire and police department can do when you build a new building. It's not going to happen. It takes adjustment. We need to make adjustments to make this thing work. Thank goodness we still have the warranty on the building as it is right now. I appreciate that very much. One of the things I wanted to
Excuse me, miss.
speak to you.
You're out of time. Thank you.
I'll let you know what the benefits are to having this district in a minute, okay, when I can talk to you privately.
Thank you, ma'am.
Good evening. My name is Hugh Drummond. I live on Depot Road in South Harwich. I was disappointed in the presentation from Scott this evening. I noticed in earlier presentations he said he was using $600,000 of the excess and deficiency account to balance the 2016 budget. In effect, what he's showing us tonight is he's only using $350,000. If he used the $600,000 that he initially promised, then we'd be well on our way to having a settlement that I'm sure the town could kick in something else. So I don't understand why we're digging our heels in. Secondly, there was some remarks that Harwich doesn't really support the schools. I did a graft, and these are numbers from the Harwich finance director. And in effect, from 2010 to 2016, Harwich has provided an increase of 36.3% of funds to the schools. And on the town side, the increase is 3.41%. I'll give a copy to Chris, and he can share it with you.
Thank you, Hugh.
Hi, my name's Cheryl Eldridge. I had no intention of coming up here today, but it must be the New York attitude that the energy's boiling over. Mr. Whitcomb, I would have loved to hear the rest of what you had to say. As far as the good to great goes,
Yes, excuse me, miss, could you tell us your address?
I'm sorry, Hallmark Lane in Harwich.
Thank you.
As far as good to great, we're back here again because you folks didn't agree with the budget the first time and wanted to discuss getting rid of 27 teachers. So we're not as good as we used to be because or 26 employees, whatever it was. We're not as good as we were because we're looking now to get rid of 10 full-time employees. So we're already backing down from what was our great back in September. So my point is, you're already, you know, the 5-year plan, you gotta put money into it, put time into it to get where you need to be. And I'm at Washer Shore. I grew up in a really big town. I hate the way politics work here, but you people have to support the kids. I was hit personally by the failed override, however many years ago that was now. My family came back, we step up, we pay our taxes. The young families in this town need to be supported, the kids need to be supported. I want my kids to have good education, I want them to stay in town. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Jennifer Ramler, Weston Woods in Harwich, and I wasn't going to speak either. But I'm a business owner here, and I run one of the highest end restaurants in Harwich, and this more goes to something that Mr. McManus said, and with the budget and the forecasting and this and that, and, you know, I have high prices, and, you know, every year, let's see, your groceries have gone up, my groceries have gone up. Your fuel costs have gone up, my costs have gone up. Your insurance has gone up, their insurance went up 10%, I can't tell you what my insurance went up. So guess what? I'm gonna have to raise my prices. And hopefully people still come and they support me. And we can't budget everything out. You can't forecast what's gonna happen with the insurance companies 5 years from now. You know, we try as much as we can and we do the best that we can. And I think we all have to live within our means. We have to try to, you know, respect the budget and respect what the town has to do. But the 700 families out of the however many residents there are, we're who's supporting you. We're the people that are supporting the businesses that are here. And these 700 families want this money. They want to raise their taxes. They don't want to raise, nobody wants to raise their taxes, but we're willing because we do want to have a great school system. We want to stay here. We want to have our families here and our businesses here and support the other however many thousand residences of Harwich. If we all leave because we don't like the schools and we feel that our kids aren't getting a good education and we're not being supported, what's going to happen to the town? And I think a lot of us young families feel that way. And so I just hope that this override goes through and that we're all able to stay.
Thank you. Noreen?
Have a seat.
Just a quick comment to answer some of the comments about the good versus great. I mean, if we're diminished, if the ultimate was September, with the September opening of the school, and that was our great pinnacle, you know, you would have to say that too bad we didn't start off with a 7-block school then, because we'd be $350,000 ahead. We're gonna see those savings in the next few years. Hindsight is perfect. I think all the people are trying to say, on this side anyway, sorry there are sides, with the good versus great, is that we're trying to quantify how $800,000 makes good great, and vice versa. You know, I mean, it's very hard to be able to say, if it's not exactly that number, then it's only good. In order to be superlative, it needs to be $2.5 million higher. So we just want to have a discourse about what the numbers are, not about the passion of supporting children or schools. Pardon me?
Those numbers, that 800 that you're trying to build right now, that was the pinnacle. That was the great. Now you're taking it away.
Okay.
We're working to figure out how to make it work.
I don't know how to respond to that. That number didn't exist. We added 500,000 as our goal and instead it came in at 1.2 million. So, I mean, we could go back and forth. I'm sorry to hear this, because the question is to quantify what changes great to good and vice versa. I don't think by reducing a number.
sorry.
Excuse me, if there are questions, please direct them at the chair.
I don't think by reducing a number of an insignificant amount really in the comparison to the whole budget, it's gonna make those kinds of differences qualitatively. And I think that goes to the heart of discourse that's not helpful to all of us here if we're trying to solve this problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Noreen.
Good evening. Late day for everybody. My name is Kristen Hayden. I'm a resident of Harwich, Cannon Hill Drive. I also work in a school system, not ours. But I have children. I have a freshman in high school, so this is very tangible and real to me and to him, every change that will come our way for Monomoy. And I also have a 6th grade daughter who will be coming up into the high school, hopefully. That is a choice that we do have, unfortunately, to make. But one of the pieces that I want to talk to, and I think we can throw a lot around about great and good, but something that's a little more tangible that I would implore you all to do is to look up college entrance requirements now. It's certainly something that's changed in the 25 years since I've left high school, and I was educated here in our towns. I grew up in Harwich, in Chatham. But one of the things that's changed so much is we're not just looking at the course offerings that kids are taking. They need to be well-rounded students. Applications are asking what kids are involved in. They're asking for things. It's certainly my job as a parent to pay for some of those extras, but they're looking for it to come also in transcripts and what kids are doing. So I just hope that if you have not taken the time to educate yourselves on college entrance requirements, that you please look that up, or that our guidance department could certainly educate you on, so that we can make informed decisions, because things that do get cut will affect what our children are able to do when their application is up against somebody else's for college. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
May I speak to her comment?
Yes.
Okay. What I didn't get to say before, I think you brought it up again, and that was, what has changed in terms of this regionalization. We had 2 towns back before that the class sizes for a lot of courses were dwindling.
I apologize for interrupting, but could you introduce yourself again,
Jill
please?
Eastman, 79 West Tupelo Drive,
Thank you.
Harwich. And consequently, when you get numbers that low, you tend not to run the course. And even more so, it's really hard to justify paying a teacher to teach 2 kids, and you're paying that salary. So by joining the schools, the goal was to try to up that amount, and thinking, sure, maybe we can let go of some teachers, because we're going to join these schools and this teacher is going to teach that. But the fact is that these schools weren't able to offer a lot of these courses because there weren't enough kids in the school to be able to do that. But now we have more kids. And in addition to that, not only do we have just the Harwich and Chatham kids coming together, now we're getting more kids in the building. So to lose these teachers after now joining and offering more courses that will get kids ready for college, AP courses, whatever it is that we couldn't offer before because there aren't enough students, now we have enough students, now we have more kids coming in, and we need those teachers to be able to do that. The class sizes are going to go up if we lose these people.
Thank you.
Hello, Simon Evans, Panorama Point in Harwich. I understand the discussion around the numbers. It's a very important part of the discussion, has to be had. But what it does seem to be unfortunate about this is the loss of the big picture when we look at the balance sheet. I moved here 3 years ago. I couldn't live anywhere I want to in the country. I am an entrepreneur. I have my own company. My business partner lives in Chicago. We have a team of people that work all over the country. We're an example of what is actually going on in this country with respect to the new economy. Harwich has a phenomenal opportunity to benefit from the new economy. We're good at access to major cities and major airports. We have a good access to the internet connections here is pretty decent. We have overall a great opportunity. We have a fantastic environment, small town, all the things that people actually want to choose to live in the new economy. with the back office associates office building. We have almost a new tech incubator going on here. One of the most critical things that entrepreneurs like myself decide when we look at this is how good are the schools. Because I want my kids to have a fantastic education and benefit from that so that they can become an entrepreneur and they can build on and grow business. If we look beyond the immediate, we do have this promise that Monomoy brings, not just about the education, but what it can do to the town in terms of bringing new money into the town, bringing new vibrancy year-round into the town so it doesn't become a dormitory half the year, and actually allow for the redevelopment and improvements in Harwich Centre and all the other things that we would like to do as a town. So I think we have to understand this is not just a balance sheet issue. This is an issue around the town and the overarching quality of the town and what they could do for attracting new people. Thank you.
Thank you.
Rich Houston, Woody Glen, here in the center of town. Quantifying is a good goal to aim for, but in education, as in other pursuits, it's hard to do. Looking at the dollars and trying to translate dollars into greatness is a tough equation. One little anecdote in the brief time I have to try to get that point across. We had all the advanced placement U.S. history students took a field trip up to the new Edward M. Kennedy Institute up in Boston last week. And the 3 AP teachers were with the 3 sets of kids, about 45 kids, I think it was in all. On the way back, one of my young colleagues, happened to be a female colleague, teachers tend to sit in the front, kids are in the back. And part of the effectiveness of a school culture is the interaction between students and teachers in informal as well as formal settings. And I was sitting up in the front talking to a couple of the young men, and I could hear behind me this young 3-year professional status, super duper coach, teacher, 8th grade to advanced placement students, interacting with 3 of the young women from the junior class. And it was, if not a little creepy eavesdropping, a joy to listen to this young woman interacting with these teenage girls who wanted to ask her about a whole host of things regarding education, college life, you go right down the list. Money translates to people. Losing people cuts into your opportunity for greatness. Thank you.
Thank you, Rich. By popular demand, I've been asked to ask Mr. Whitcomb if he would be prepared to give us an update on the school building project.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll try to find it here. And I'll be as brief as possible, and I'm approximating some numbers, but before regionalization, Harwich, the Harwich Town Meeting voted $42 million in their capital plan to build a new high school. The actual cost of that new high school to Harwich, and I'm using approximate numbers, there's still some time to go, is going to be about $22 million to Harwich's share, which is a savings of $20 million in that plan that can be diverted to other needs in the town as far as capital costs go. Now, after regionalization, both the communities, both Chatham and Harwich, went to their town meetings and supported $36.5 million to build the high school through bonding. Of that $36.5 million, Harwich will save $4.8 million because of what we've been able to do on the team that we built, the finance people and everything. So I think briefly, that's some very good news to Chatham. Again, that $4.8 million may be spread to the rest of the community for needs that they might. So I think, just to sum it up, that we have the school, the school building committee, the operation, the school committee has really tried to take into consideration the other needs of Harwich in their presentation of this budget. They cut quite a bit out of the budget the other night that many of the teachers and people here tonight supported because they wanted to compromise. And I hope that you'll be able to make a compromise as we move forward and support most, if not all, of this budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Whitcomb.
Thank you, Skip. Just a comment on process. This was as I mentioned before, this is a joint meeting between the Selectmen and the Finance Committee to gather data. We're obviously separate committees, and now we'll go our separate ways and trying to figure out how we deal with the budget and the expense issues, not only of the school, but of the town. And I very much appreciate all the input tonight. We're certainly listening. It is a point that it's an interesting discussion of great schools. We all want great schools. We want to do it within our finite resources, and that's what our discussion is now. And I hope it, and I'm sure we'll come to a solution before we get to town meeting. Thank you very much for your input.
Yeah, we have to by law.
Have to by law. Peter?
I just ask questions. Skip, I'm just curious, what your schedule for your committee is, because in my mind, it would be helpful if the Finance Committee could dig into the town budget that was sent to you, the warrant that was sent to you, the school budget that was sent to you, and come back and meet with us, I think, jointly in maybe 2 weeks or whatever you tell the time frame, to see if we can't figure this whole thing out.
Yeah, well, as you know, we have the joint budget hearings on Wednesday. Finance Committee is going to meet, assuming we have a quorum, after that, and vote articles, whatever articles we've already heard and can vote on. And then I can get back to you and Larry or whoever to...
I think you work through the chair, but my recommendation is at some point in the near future, we get back together as a working group or something to...
Absolutely, and that's one of the discussions we need to have Wednesday night after the joint meeting is done.
I think, Skip, you're out, but when we met last time, Rich Larios was speaking about you guys meeting after Wednesday, then I think we have a meeting after that, so there'll be 2 weeks in a row.
That's correct.
That they plan to meet after our joint meeting, so I would presume that we could get together, a week after that, or maybe Monday.
Well, I think next week's Wednesday joint meeting is just a reserve meeting. It doesn't have any items on it, right?
It does, because we moved, remember,
okay, because of the
25th back.
storms,
It has a
right.
full schedule.
Yeah, okay.
It does.
Well,
It is loaded.
well, then maybe we should meet after that.
After that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we're all there. Thank you.
Okay, a little
Are we
internal
dismissed?
housekeeping. Thank you, Terry
gentlemen.
and Scott.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Skip.
Hi. Oh, I've always been flexible, you just haven't noticed it, that's all. Well, you can hear all the things you want, and I appreciate that, but I mean, in the end, we know we have to solve the problem, so.
Okay, I'm
And it's a
sorry, Lionel,
process.
we have more on the agenda.
It's a process.
No.
No, we gotta keep going. Well,
We gotta
thank you
keep
very much.
going.
Thank you. Yeah.
Catch him in the hall after the
Yeah,
meeting.
no, you'll have to hang around for that. What do they do with mine?
Moving, if we can move the discussions, Terry and Skip. We,
FinCom, leave
as
the room.
as surprising as it sounds, we still have a meeting to go through. Our next on the agenda is the warrant one-liners discussion. I think this is more, Chris, just for review at this point, but
Well,
it ties into our warrant articles as we go forward.
yeah, I think if the board wants to, to start to vote some of these things, I know Mr. McCready's been
Yes.
sitting through, and he's here to obviously comment on the ones. I don't know if you want to try to knock some of these off and get the
I
formal
would,
votes on them.
I would like to do that. The only one I need to pull from this is Article 32.
Which is really
Yep.
33.
Which is because there was a mistake made, and it actually, the 33 was given in our packet, not 32. So let's pull that, and we'll bring that back next week when the
Yep.
article matches the packet information. Otherwise, let's go through these and,
Are we bringing back?
pardon?
The packet was fine, the agenda's wrong.
They don't match, is my point.
The backup, article, number 9 backup, the spreadsheet is fine, but Article 32 was mislabeled, and Article 32 in the agenda was mislabeled.
Correct. Just means it's inconsistent, so we can bring it back next week. Point taken.
So I wanted to make sure that happened.
If the agenda doesn't match the packet, then we'll be in trouble, that those who may want to speak to it may not realize that.
Like the 1858 map needs to get voted on. It's not 1858 anymore, you know. Mr. Chairman,
Okay.
I would move Article 10, adopt the capital plan.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor that we,
Aye.
Aye.
okay, good. All right, it's getting late in the day, so this will go quickly.
Did you ask for any nays?
Article, any nays?
Mr. Chairman, I would move Article 30, reserve future appropriation amounts from FY 14 Community Preservation Fund estimated annual revenues, accept and adopt.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? In favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's passed.
Mr. Chairman, I would move Article 31, it's a CPC article, restoration of the Rogers Group sculptures in the amount of $23,000 from the CPC funds.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? In favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So we don't want to do the map, huh?
No.
Okay, Mr. Chairman.
Let me just, let me interrupt you just for a second. Just for those in the audience who may be watching, we're going through this relatively quickly because we had the input from the departments last Wednesday night, so this was not new information for us. And Ms. McCready was here as arguing about this one we mislabeled, but to support the CPC.
Okay.
Go ahead, Peter.
Mr. Chairman, with that, I would move Article 34, accept and adopt from CPC funds $300,000 for the Harwich Affordable Housing Rental Assistance Program.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Mr. Chairman, I would move accept and adopt Article 35, which is fund administrative costs of the CPC in the amount of $50,000 from CPC funds.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? In favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Mr. Chairman, I would move Article 36, accept and adopt amend the town charter, Section 6-7-2, library trustees.
Is there a second? Any discussion? In favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I would move Article 37, adopt Mass General Law, Chapter 59, Section 5, Clause 41D, senior exemptions.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? In favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried?
Mr. Chairman, I would move, this will be controversial, I can tell, I would move Article 38, defray the expense of the Chase and Harwichport libraries in the amount of $20,000 from available funds.
The second?
For discussion purposes, second.
Okay. Discussion, Linda, you?
I think we should be funding our own library, not the private libraries. So I will do my perennial no vote.
Okay, it's customary, but
It's been flat for years and years. It's a small percent. I think in the years past, in fact, the library committee's been here to support it.
And I don't see them tonight.
Get somebody here.
Yes, sir.
Yes. My name is David Pickett. I'm on the Board of Trustees of the Harwichport Library. And you want my address?
Sure.
Yeah, 14 Little Lane.
Yeah.
Harwich.
Okay.
Okay. And I'm here to support this article. This has been quite a year for us as far as upkeep. The snow removal just in the last few weeks has been quite expense for us. There's several damages to the library in the last 2 or 3 weeks from the snow plowing. The fence has to be replaced. We have the railings leading into the library that has to be replaced. And there's other things that we've been trying to do over the last few years, replacing the shingles and so on of the building. And this amount of money will certainly help us in that completing those projects.
Okay, thank you.
Okay?
Any more discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Ed?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
And one opposed.
Mr. Chairman, before we do Article 39, I'll just point out I am a member of the Chamber of Commerce, just to disclose that, but I would move Article 39, promote the town of Harwich, accept and adopt the amount of $25,000 available funds.
And
Second.
just a second. I'll just point out, yeah, I'm an associate member at the time of the chamber. Now we're being, but this 25,000, and Ed's a member as well, I think. So we're
A necessity. A necessity.
a necessity. 25,000 is level funded from last year. It's the same amount, so they didn't ask for additional money. Is there a second?
I did, I second.
Second? Any more discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carried?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
If I just, well, we have the public, Article 37 that we voted on, it has to do with how the Board of Assessors can view applicants for senior exemptions to tax abatements and basically assistance in meeting their property taxes. And I think it should be known that in all of Massachusetts, our Board of Assessors hold the distinction of giving out the greatest number, numerically, of exemptions for hardship or of one sort or another than any other town in the Commonwealth, irregardless of size. And they do this, and they manage it so well that they routinely, in addition to giving out the exemptions, return money from their overlay account. And they do this as part of the social safety net that operates in this town on many levels. It's done publicly through the Jim Noonan community service grants that the town gives out to agencies, the Board of Assessors in their work and with folks that are having a hard time, the Caleb Chase Fund, both the one that was set up by Caleb Chase and the one that was set up by the employees to do deductions out of their paychecks, and also all of the other agencies in town, the Hetch and the Family Pantry. And you know, we understand that at times costs get up on people, but I think this town has done above and beyond what any other town does to provide a solid social safety net for our older and hard-pressed residents.
Thank you, Ed.
Special warrant?
We need to move on the spatial warrant.
Mr. Chairman,
Before we do
Yeah.
that, on the one-liners,
Okay.
there's, I just want to make sure that we, on number 48 of the one-liners, we had moved to accept and adopt for about $27,000. And I don't see it in one of the funding columns.
we did that last,
But on the one-liners that was in our
I know,
packet.
I know.
Yeah.
So let's make sure that that somehow gets funded.
Which, what
It's
was the
unpaid
title
bills.
on it?
48.
It's unpaid
Fund
bills.
Unpaid bills.
prior bills.
Unpaid
We'll
bills.
take care of it.
Yeah.
I
And
just
that
wanna
number
make sure.
tends to change as you get to the point where you know what the unpaid bills are.
Well, we did, we voted
Coming out of water funds.
Do you want a number?
27,561.20.
Okay. Is that specific? That's a specific. Thanks for that response.
Well, I just want to make sure it doesn't get lost as we start spending free cash and get to a ballot
No,
next week
no,
and all of a
yeah.
sudden find out, oops,
Yep.
we need something.
Okay. Okay?
Yep.
We're proposing that we open the special town meeting warrant on Wednesday, March 18th, and close it. Open it at 8:30 and close it on Friday, March 20th at noon.
Didn't we vote that last time?
We did not.
You did not.
Okay.
No.
Mr. Chairman, I'd move that we open special town meeting warrant on Wednesday, March 18th at 8:30 a.m. and close it on Friday, March 20th at noon.
Second.
Any discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That's carried. C, you have a copy of a draft ballot in the packet. I chose in this case not to vote on it tonight. It's due by after next week, and this will give us a chance to read it more leisurely pace, and we'll vote it. We'll bring it back next week with any comments you have on it, and we'll vote it. Linda?
Well, I think one comment now is I think the Muddy Creek one is missing.
Muddy Creek is being funded out of general tax,
General.
It
so
is.
it would not
Yeah.
be
How are we doing that?
we'd be borrowing authorization with the idea that we would not have to fully fund the total amount, and it would come out under the, we have to fund the 100,000 or 75,000, ultimately, whatever it comes out per year within the operating budget.
Oh, that should be interesting.
So it won't be
Con-
fired.
Considering
won't.
that we're, talking about more fiscal cliffs for the school next year, I hope we can do that.
No, I think we ought to have a discussion about that and think about
Maybe we
it.
ought to have a discussion about that.
I would at least for a sample, put a question in here, just for fun.
Okay, we'll, Chris, you and I can talk about that then and see if we want to, if we draft something, then just give us some options.
Because I guess I must have missed the part of funding it through the operating budget.
No, Chris mentioned that
was in
before
there.
about, it was in the budget
That's
before,
it.
but you're right, because it's a larger amount of money, so it's
But I'm not
pay
sure,
the debt.
but I'm not sure I realized where it was in the budget.
Not sure you're gonna absorb it.
Right,
So
yeah.
if we could just have
I
an
think the debate
understanding
is
of that.
whether we agree we can absorb it in out years is further discussion. Okay, but any other comments, or get comments back to Chris in the next couple of days, and we'll bring it back next week. Now, next week, we do have to vote on it, because then it's, so be sure you get comments back. Right?
Well, it would be good if we at least, maybe we do this in a joint meeting on Wednesday, after the joint meeting, is sort of over, maybe we could vote on these actual articles that are associated with these. It makes sense to take a position on the articles before we set the ballot, if we can.
Oh, on the ballot articles
Yeah,
themselves?
yeah.
Yeah, we could do that,
Makes sense.
yeah.
Agenda.
Wednesday, yeah, we can't do it, we'll make it, tomorrow will be
Then we
Tuesday.
should do it next Monday.
We could do it next Monday.
Before we do the ballot, the best we can.
We can do,
Okay, we should go through,
next week then, we can cover the warrant
You can
articles that,
sequence it where you do the warrant
and then we'll
article
do the
first,
warrant,
ballot
and then
starts, we'll
ballot
do it.
afterwards.
That's all.
And so we
yeah,
vote
we
on
should
those.
basically, next week should be a article review
Right,
and very little else.
yeah. And that'll be good. Okay,
Unless you have any budget issues you want to talk about.
That'll be part of it.
Yeah.
next week could be part of that. All right. We'll move next then to Town Administrator's Report. Chris?
Yeah, I didn't realize the meeting was going to go quite so long, so I'm going to try to at least get these concepts out on the table. I did meet with the Deputy Fire Chief not that long ago, and we are having concerns in regards to basically the ambulance runs. The number of ambulance runs going in out of East Harwich is excessive, just due to the number of calls, and that is creating some fiscal stress for this year. It looks like anticipated about $125,000 shortfall. We have put some contingencies into place already to kind of reduce some of the training and scale back in other areas. But if that trend continues in that 125, obviously our total amount for the reserve fund is only 125,000. One option that would have to be considered would be to not continue to staff station, the East Harwich station, but to scale back on that and run everything out of the main station. $125,000 shortfall is significant. I'll get additional material and we can have a discussion, but I at least wanted to put that on the table as a radar point.
Can I just ask a question on that, or a
Yes,
suggestion? That is, some of that must be being billed, and some of it must be being reimbursed, I'm guessing, from the ambulance, to the ambulance fund. The question is, how much, what are we spending?
We are bringing in revenue,
Yeah.
as well, but we
But-
only have a certain amount that's actually targeted within the budget. And right now, the service levels are higher than what we have staffing, basically
Yeah,
staffing.
no, I
for.
understand that, but I guess the question is, we're spending, and I'm making up a number, actually, $100,000.
Mhm.
Are we at all coming close to generating $60,000 in fees associated with those runs?
Yeah, well,
And I understand where the money goes and all that, I'm just, is it that bad that, we're losing everything?
Okay, Ed?
Well, if we could access the money that's being generated, we'd probably be okay. But the problem is those funds, if they are coming in above our revenue estimates, they haven't then been budgeted and fall to free cash, which won't be certified until sometime this time next year, and available for expenditure at next town meeting a year from now.
No, I get all that.
And
we have
it's a
material, we'll put it in
problem.
the package, so you'll be able to see the
Yeah,
numbers.
I think we understand that. I think what we're asking is just what the overall net will be, taking the timeline.
Yeah.
Yep.
So we have a comfort level going forward.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
is it East Harwich runs or is it Fontaine?
It's Fontaine.
From East Harwich.
But
Yeah, I
Fontaine
just wanna
runs
make
out of
sure
East
it's not,
Harwich.
it's Fontaine.
Yeah. The next one, it's been kind of a tough couple weeks here. I just received information last week that on the police department, their public safety answering point called PSAP, that the analog units are going to be obsolete and need to be replaced with a digital one. I just got the memo, literally, I think it was last Wednesday or Thursday. For us to update, to have that would be about $57,000. And I have a meeting on Wednesday to get a better understanding for what we need to do. But my understanding at this point is that once the analog units receive the information from the 911 system, once it switches to the digital, it will not be able to translate all the information correctly. So it is going to be something that is of critical importance. My plan and what I was going to suggest for this evening is I will put that as a capital exclusion because I think that needs to be done. The timeline they're talking about is November, December. So it would be within next fiscal year that has to be
Yeah,
done.
and you see, that's the part that's changed, because we've known from our capital outlay committee meetings for some time that this was coming, at 57,000. But Chris, what you're bringing to us tonight is, the change is the timeline.
Correct.
The discussion before was, they actually didn't expect it to be this soon. They expected it to be sometime next year, possibly even the year after.
And
And
that's
this is a mandate from the state that, it's, in a larger sense, an unfunded mandate. They say we have to do it all of a sudden, but we're hoping.
Mhm.
So that's a big change pushing into this year.
So hopefully I'll have more information after the meeting with the chief and the deputy.
Make any sense to think about putting in the special?
Well, that's where it would have
Well,
to
the
be.
article
Has
would
to
have
be
to be
now.
in the special
Yeah,
too.
so when you're doing that.
Yeah. On the other one, it seems like it's all bad news tonight. On Cape Cod Tech School, they did do based upon the governor's budget, they did an analysis. They've provided an estimate. My estimate was strictly a kind of a shot in the dark. I was about 40,000 off. So we need to have 40,000 additional, which as an estimate, I guess wasn't too bad, all things considered. So that one will be an adjustment. On the snow budget, I had, kind of had in the back of my mind a plan where we would fund 850,000 towards capital out of the 1.35 that we have, that has been certified. And then my plan was to have additional money set aside for stabilization, 100,000 for stabilization. I was going to use the balance for snow. Now, even with the 500,000 that's available, the shortfall is 532,000. So I'm basically, reason why I'm kind of saying these is I think when I come back with a budget amendment, I may go back through the budget and see what things we can tweak, because there's just not enough money to cover what needs to be covered. So those are, just some, and just, we did update for the governor's budget numbers, which had a net positive, I think, of about $39,000.
It's unfortunate that the school people aren't here to hear the other pressures on the town.
Yeah.
And that actually, should have tried to end on a happy note, but that's my list, and it's late, so we'll end.
Well, spring is coming, so
Spring is here.
That is-
hopefully it won't
End of
snow
the week.
anymore. If it does, we're dead.
Hopefully it won't snow anymore. That concludes my report, this evening, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you, Chris. Ed? Peter?
I'm good, thank you.
Good. Linda?
I'm good.
Good. Entertain motion to adjourn, second?
Second.
All in favor?
I'll be there Wednesday, but I'll be late. I'm driving from Norwell at 4 o'clock, so I'll get there, but, no, but I mean, I'm